Hello.
Sir,
Hello, please go ahead.
please, this is Mary speaking. A little bit of suggestion. With the recording videos, I know some of them we do ask questions, and sometimes if the questions are people are not answering the questions, it makes it watching the video quite boring. So I don't know whether it could be edited a little bit, especially when there are some of the videos you kept asking questions from students, but students were not participating. So it made watching the video a little bit boring when they were not participating. So if you could edit some of the videos which are being posted on the YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you very much. But I'm sorry, I didn't hear because your connectivity was breaking here and there. I didn't get the flow of
Oh,
the
okay.
question. If you can, I don't know if repositioning can help the connectivity. I
Oh,
heard
okay. So is it better now?
largely about some videos watching them being boring. If you can clarify.
Yes. Some of the videos, it's participatory. So you ask some of students questions, but when students are not answering the questions, for I think there are some of the videos about 5 minutes you keep asking, they're not answering the questions. So it makes it boring. Like if you could, that part could be edited so that the sections that students are not answering, there are sometimes you ask them, nobody's answering. So it makes it very lengthy. So if those parts could be a little bit edited so that we could
Okay.
enjoy the lecture more. Yes. Thank
Okay, I
you.
get it. Yeah. In fact, all the videos I normally put there are direct lectures. I don't edit them because you might not have the time to do all those kind of editing before you put a video there for students to prepare with a video for the exam. The editing itself can take you days, if not weeks. Meanwhile, students have few days to prepare for their lecture. That's why you see all of them being raw there. I think, yeah, the feedback is very good for me, but in terms of um, what students need at what time for which particular purpose, the editing part would have, if it had been edited, the editing part would have delayed time, and maybe they wouldn't have had a video on time to prepare for the exam. What I can advise for now, pending any editing issue, is that even I think for some of the videos, you can even see some break lapse between them. Sometimes I give them like 5 minutes, they should brainstorm and do certain things. It is meant to be that much interactive, but if that part is boring for you, that's why it's a video. You can kind of drag the play bar a little to take that part off and continue where you think you need to continue from. Because the concept of boring or boredom can be quite relative. Maybe that part is where someone also thinks it helps him, right? So don't let us be concerned too much about it. It's about the information you want. If a certain part of it is not too relevant for you, you can drag. We all watch videos, some parts of a video by someone, you might even have, uh, you may already know it, so you don't need that part. You can just drag it and go ahead. Yeah, so let's do it like that for now. Okay. So your question is very much in relation to just what I'm saying. I've given you reading assignments. We've done some lectures. We've done some tutorials. We are supposed to do review to know how well we have been able to get the things, because most of the time, what we are yet to do will kind of require what we know, what we have done previously, and how much we know about that. So if you don't do that recall, you'll not be able to link previous lectures with lectures that are going to be done currently. And when we begin the session where students should participate in order to kind of deal with the issue of boredom or boring as you're speaking. You have to be prepared to talk, right? So let's start from you. Just tell us anything in
So
terms
the
of
line
something
was.
you didn't understand.
So what did
Go
you say?
ahead.
Can you please come again, my line? So what did you say? What was the question?
In fact, it's general to the class. I'm saying we have few
Mhm.
minutes to do interaction about what we need clarification on from what we read, what we have done so far. So let's be quick so that it doesn't become boring, because when you ask student questions and they don't respond, that's where the boredom comes in. So let's be quick. We can start from you. Anybody at all can just talk. What have you read? What are the problem areas that you think we need clarification we should discuss before we start today's work?
So the last
Okay,
time you
so
asked us to read
yes,
on the watch the video on the relevant question, and
yes.
so I was thinking probably we will do a little bit of that before we do the financial management, the internal
No,
control.
we will not do a little bit of that. If you think you need to watch the lecture again, you can re-watch the lecture, because that lecture has
Uh-huh.
tutorials for all of the separate parts of relevant costing. If it's about relevant costing on make or buy, relevant costing on further processing, there are standard tutorials on them. Maybe what you will need, I just told the course rep about it. If you need to solve more question about it, you can find a manual that topic is in and read. All right. We don't need to go back and spend all the time on one thing. The lecture is always there, 24/7, every time, everywhere. So you can watch it again. And if you have specific questions, then you can ask those specific questions and they will address them, but we won't go back and redo the lecture. Okay. Any other question? Right. So let's talk about today's work, internal control system. This topic is about how businesses should position themselves so that they do well and achieve the objectives as they have set forth for themselves. And we all understand that um, no business is formed with the intention that the business does not do well or the business collapses along the line. Every business is formed with the intention that the business becomes profitable, the business year on year expands on its market share, and if possible, the business becomes the leader in the industry. When you form your own business, that may be your dream about your business. But we are all eyewitnesses to the fact that many businesses, even bigger ones, collapse. We see a lot of them. We have a lot of experiences about them. Here in Ghana, I think it's so fresh in the minds of all of us about the collapses in the banking sector, Capital Bank, UT Bank, and the likes. Not even to talk about those so-called what are their names? Microfinance and the likes. Even Indium, who everybody knows to be well established in terms of that business. Indium is collapsed. Indium Bank, GN Bank is collapsed, and so on and so forth. In fact, if you kind of scale it down to what is happening in the small, medium-sized business sector, the collapse rate is very alarming. So the question is, if businesses are established with all intent to make them survive forever, and not just survival, to make them do well, to make them become profitable, to make them have, increasing market share. Why then do we see a lot of businesses not realizing that dream and dying every now and then? Okay. What will cause businesses to collapse can come from factors which are internal to the organization, to the firm, or to the business, or external to it. In most cases, those factors that can disturb or that can prevent a firm from achieving its objectives, those factors that come from without or from external sources, are beyond the control of the firm. In most cases, not all. So just as we have factors that can inhibit the firm from achieving its objectives coming from outside the firm, we also have a lot of them coming from within the firm. And within the firm, issues in most cases are within the control of the firm. Let me give you an example. If we take one thing that comes from within that can inhibit a firm from achieving its objective, and of course I know we can have diverse objectives, but all of them may translate into increasing profitability, increasing market share, and on all those things. One thing that we know for sure can inhibit a firm from achieving such objectives is, poor contracting of employees. Let me put it that way. What I mean is, if your HR system, how you employ people, the kind of people you employ, the skill sets they bring on board, the whole of the process of hiring people into the organization, if it is poor, yes, that can see you on your way to collapse, can see you off business. But this is purely an internal issue. You can decide to employ all of the people from your family and friends, whether they have the skill to do the job or not. Yes. Or you can do better and go skill hunting, make sure that people with top skill are filled in the organization. The firm has full control about that. So that's an example of an internal issue. An example of an external issue could be maybe government policy, right? No one particular firm, except maybe the firm is very highly political and it can have influence of government political decisions. Something like the free SHS policy. We all know how it is affecting private schools who are within that same sector. We are all aware of that. And let's say you operate a private school, senior high school, and there's this government policy of free SHS. Whether it's going to hit you bad or hit you good, you have no control. You cannot stop the government from doing its policy. You seem not to have any way of controlling that kind of thing. So that's an example of an external factor that could uh, inhibit a firm from achieving its objectives. Our focus in this lecture is going to be more on the internal issues, even though for knowledge purposes you should also read on the external issues as well. Okay, so we are going to focus on internal factors that can prevent the firm from achieving its objectives. In fact, let me make it open. When we say factors that can inhibit a firm from achieving its objectives, we are also talking about factors that can enhance the firm's achieving its objectives. So we are looking at both sides. Okay. We call these factors risks to objectives. Risk. Risks to achieving your objectives, right? And the risk can be downside risks, downside risk, or upside risk. So the downside risk is those that is going to kind of bring you down as a business. All the negative risks, like the first one I gave, the first example I gave, um, employees being bad, not of the right caliber for the job, and that they are stealing the organization's money. So we have a lot of fraud because they are not skilled the right way, a lot of mistakes, and customers are getting angry and not returning, I mean, coming back for buying from us, making us grow our sales. All of these things are downside risks. But we can also have upside risks, especially the opposite of that same thing. If we have employees of the highest caliber, maybe than what all of our competitors have, that is probably going to help us overachieve our objectives. So all the things that can help you achieve your objectives are also risks, but they are upside risks. So see risk to be that flexible thing of two sides, downside and upside. What should firms do to make sure that they manage these risks so that the organization is able to achieve its objectives? Focusing on only the internal issues, we call all the things that the organization can do, the methods, the policies, the directives, the systems that they can put in place, all together to make sure that the firm is able to manage downside risk, manage upside risks to get the organization on track towards its objectives, is what we describe as internal control system. And that was the main topic that you saw from the beginning, internal control system. We can have several ways of doing that kind of thing called internal control system. We said it's all the things that the firm can do. It can come in the form of methods, policies, procedures, other systems put in place. It can be as simple as all doors are are locked with a particular security lock. It's part of the control things that you have to do to make sure. So it's a combination of many things that you can do with the objective that the firm is not going to fail. The firm will be on track towards its objectives. Internal control system. We can have many ways of doing it, like I said before, but there is a framework, a very renowned framework on internal control systems that we are going to discuss. Regarding this topic of internal control system, we are going to adopt that framework. I don't think it is wrong for you to say that that framework is like the mother framework for all internal control frameworks. if you see all other frameworks, they are much derived from that framework we are going to talk about. In fact, the name of the framework was coined from the committee that was formed to come up with that framework. It started in the US, and most things have always been starting from the US. I don't know why. In the US, there were series of collapses of businesses. Just like quite recently we were experiencing in Ghana, especially in the banking sector. So some organizations formed a committee to do like investigate into why it is like that and come up with conclusions as to the causes and remedies. And that was formed into the framework that we are going to discuss about. That committee was made up of a lot of accountancy bodies in the USA. Some were auditing firms, some big auditing firms in the US. Some were some statutory accounting bodies like the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I think there were about 5 bodies that formed that committee. And they called the committee, in short, COSO, COSO, meaning Committee of Sponsoring Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. In fact, these bodies that I said came together to do that kind of investigation and come up with a report. They were the same committee sponsoring themselves. So that's where the name was drawn from Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. Quite some funny name, Committee of Sponsoring Organization, COSO. And they came up with a framework they called Internal Control Integrated Framework. Internal Control Integrated Framework. In their understanding of what internal control should be, which forms their framework called Internal Control Integrated Framework, they are making a case for 5 layers within any system of internal control in a firm. 5 layers. So that if all these layers are there and effective, the firm can be described as having a solid internal control system. And by theory, that firm should never fail. That firm should achieve its objective. What are the layers then? Let me just list the layers. We'll take them in turns and then we expand them. They talked about 1, control environment. 2, risk assessment process. 3, information and communication. 4, control activities. And 5, monitoring. Monitoring. Okay, so this is what their framework is saying that every good internal control system should have these subsystems. You can call them layers, or you can call them components of internal control system. What goes into each one of them? In the first place, what do they mean? And what specific things go into them? Let's try and know. But before I even come to that, you always need to read further on the things we do in class. We meet few hours, and that is not enough for you to gain the understanding you need for your work and your business. That's not enough. So you have to read beyond them. And even for exams, you may have to read beyond them. So you can Google. I just want to show you something. We can just Google on the COSO framework. And you can read a lot about it on the internet. The COSO framework. Let me try to make you see them even in diagram. You are going to just pick one. Okay. Okay, so this is coming from a certain source. What we're interested in is this kind of cube they have been describing as COSO cube. It kind of gives you the components and the objectives behind the component. You can see the control environment here, risk assessment, control activity, information and communication, monitoring. And you can see, let me try to zoom. You can see that these internal control components are designed to achieve these three broader objectives: effective operations, effective financial reporting, effective compliance with laws and regulation. And if you check this side of the cube, it is giving you things like entity level, division level, operating units, functions. What it is actually saying in summary is the internal control system should be applied at all levels of the organization, from top to down, from left to right, from wherever. It is not to be done in specific areas with other areas left. No. So that's the idea behind the COSO framework. All right. So now let's go back and try to look at them one after the other. What is a control environment? Control environment. When we say environment, let me try to give a scenario and then we can get the understanding from there. The meaning of the word environment here should be understood in this sense. You see, the way you do things creates a certain environment. If we take it from what happens in our homes, various homes, we all understand that we have different environments in our homes. The environment is not a literal environment. The kind of atmosphere that you create in your home because of what happens there creates an environment. And in fact, you have to understand the usage of environment in this case from that perspective. So we can have a home where a child always needs to open book, read. He doesn't need to go out. He should always be in. If he's not reading, he has to be doing some other things like playing organ, blah, blah, and sleeping, blah, blah. So that constitutes a particular environment in such a home. And that environment is different from a home where children are not controlled by their parents. They are always working on the refuse dam, collecting cans and playing football, doing their own thing. They don't even bath. That is also a different environment. So when we talk about the control environment, we are talking about the kind of environment control-wise that exists in an organization. Is it the environment that is like the first home? A child is monitored to do what the parents have set forth for him to do to achieve in life. Or is the environment where children do what they like, they don't even bath. 3 days self, they have not taken their bath and nobody cares. So the internal control environment, which is detected by the top leadership, it normally comes from leadership because, of course, if you want to even borrow some aspect of the word control, control always comes from the top. So we can even say the kind of environment that is set forth by people in control. You're not wrong to kind of get the understanding from that angle. So top management, what's their belief? What's their philosophy when it comes to internal control? Is it a laissez-faire type of master control be what? Master. We are in Africa. Normally you hear people making certain comments. Like what I just said. Master, hi Africa. So if you have top management having that philosophy, hi Africa, Master, that kind of thing. That tells you the kind of environment, if that is generally what top people, those in leadership positions, if that is generally their attitude towards controls, then that's the kind of environment, and that's the control environment. And it can be bad or good. So in this case, that tells you what it is. Very bad. We can have management believing so much in ethics, so much in customer care, so much in honesty. And that will constitute the environment through which controls will work. So it's largely about top management style of leading the organization. They are believing, principles of integrity, principles of straightforwardness, honesty, and all those kind of things that they will go into the control environment. So that's it about the control environment. Any question? Or any contribution? Okay. The second one is risk assessment. We said from the beginning that all the factors, both internal and external, that can contribute to the firm not achieving its objectives are described as risks. So that tells you that if organizations want to achieve and want to leave towards achieving or leave to achieve the objectives, then they need to have a critical eye on risk. So the organization should have a risk management system. So when COSO says risk assessment, what they mean actually is some risk management system in the organization, which basically scans the environment to identify all events, all factors that could represent upside risk, downside risk, and the impact that these risks will have on the organization. Basically, that's what a risk assessment or risk management system or process will be involved with. Apart from the tracking, it also needs to be established in such a way that it will continually update the identification of risks and the impacts. Because what is risk today may not be risk tomorrow, and what is not risk today may be risk tomorrow. And they might be changing from time to time. That's why the updating part of this risk management system is very much important for the survival of businesses. So basically, two key things will go in. Risk identification. So identification of factors that represent risk. Then quantifying the impact of the risk. Basically, these are the two critical things that go into it. Impact. So, organizations normally prepare a document about these two things, and that document is generally referred to as risk register. So if you are not doing one for your firm, it depends on the influence you have on getting these things done. If you do have the influence of causing certain things to be done, then you need to see your organization, whether they have something like risk register, whether they do something like risk assessments. They do something like risk identification, impact of risk into a document called risk register, whether they do one and whether they get it updated from time to time. If they don't, it means that your firm is not doing anything to measure how it is on track towards achieving its objectives. And that can be very bad. And if you are the one to do it, then from this lecture, you're supposed to be more knowledgeable about how these things are done and begin to implement them in your firm. Okay, so that's basically about the risk assessment process as a component of the COSO framework of internal control system. Any questions about that one? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rich.
I want to.
Rich, I'm listening to you, please. Okay, let's go ahead. I think we've lost Rich. There's no connectivity between Rich and myself.
Sir,
Okay, now yeah, Rich, are you back?
no, this Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond, please go ahead.
I'd like to know what a typical risk register might entail.
What a typical risk register might do.
Might entail. What constitutes?
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good question. So let's take the opportunity. In fact, the designing can be customized based on a particular organization, but they have some basic things in common. So I want us to do this. We can do as we did for the COSO, the so-called COSO cube. So let me do this. Let me just Google and find some pictures of risk register. So risk register. In fact, when I'm Googling, I even see risk register template. So you can see a lot from what others are doing and learn. You can learn this thing in a few minutes time and begin to implement them in your firm. The risk register. Let me go to the template straight away. I want to see. Let me even add this XLX. Let me try to get it in Excel that I can zoom for us to see. Let me see this one. Okay, so this is what we get from one particular firm. So this what their risk register is like. This is how it looks like. They have risk ID. I just want to show you the overview. You can download samples and check in detail how people are doing it. You have risk ID. So you might even code all your risks. You give them particular IDs. And when you give them ID, they have to get labels. Okay, maybe R. I mean, you can code them anyhow. Maybe R for risk, R0001 is actually a particular risk. So you can have even charts for them. So risk ID, description. Then risk owner. The risk owner basically is the person in charge of managing that risk. So you see name of person who monitors the risk. Risk owner. Let me zoom. Risk owner. Then risk trigger. How you know the risk is becoming an issue or has reached a point that requires. So this is how this particular firm is doing it. So it has these kind of headings as the register. Risk ID, description, risk owner, risk trigger, risk category. Probability. So this is the impact. I mean, the probability is part of the impact measurement. Probability is different from the impact. So probability is the likelihood of the risk happening. Yes, that's very important part of the risk register. And the impact. And normally the product of the probability and the impact gives you information as to how you have to handle that risk. Should it be highly prioritized risk or it can be lowly prioritized? For example, if the probability or the likelihood that that risk will crystallize is very high and the impact too is very high, of course, it's like petrol and fire. If they ignite, danger. You have to highly prioritize such risk. Have all your focus on managing it. And the reverse is also true. So apart from probability impact, in addition to the other things you have said, they have PI score, probability multiplied by impact. That's what I was saying. So they call it PI, probability impact, expected results, and so on and so forth. So if you read this template, you think you are cool, you can adopt it, or you can pick some part of it and pick some part from somewhere you think is beautiful and add your own thinking to it based on how things work in your organization, and you can have a very good risk register. Richmond.
Yes, sir.
I hope it answers you at least partly.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, so that's about the risk assessment. The next component, according to the COSO framework, is I think that will be 3. Yeah. Information and communication. Information and communication. What COSO means by this kind of layer in the internal control system is that, of course, it comes from this common sense thing that organizations run by information. Everything we do, I mean, we are connected, the various parts of the organization, from leadership to the rank and file, across functions, between functions. However, we are chained by information and, of course, communication. So every internal control system, or as part of what will make the organization realize its objectives, there should be a good system of information and communication. A good information and communication system, let me put it that way. There should be a robust and effective information and communication system. So by information system, the system that captures information, it should be as complete as possible to capture all relevant information, and it should be set up to capture information as accurate as possible, because our lives depend on it. If we get wrong information, we are heading towards our grave. It should be set up to be very effective in capturing, processing, and disseminating the information across the entire organization for decision making. That's the information and communication subsystem of the internal control system. So it has to do with information systems. Of course, when we say information systems, it should not be seen as comprising only of IT stuff. It can be a manual information system, like things used to be paper-based systems. Someone is preparing this book, and the output from that book forwarded to another office. They do that's also a system. At least there's a system which records or captures data, processes the data, which generates information for decision making. But it will be good, and that's the modern trend, if the information and communication system is automated. And it's automated in the right direction. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to, unless there's a question. From this time around, I want to come up with some foolish assumption for myself. I'll proceed assuming everybody is okay, nobody has a question. So if you do have a question, you have to alert me. So let's go to the 4th layer of COSO's internal control system. They call it, control activities. In some other texts, you will see that control procedures. They mean the same thing. Control activities. What is COSO
the
said?
third one, does it involve security?
Richmond, expand a little bit about your security. Maybe it will involve, but I need.
I mean,
Please go ahead.
right now that everything is on the internet, as in
Yes.
maybe the system might run an intranet or through the internet, there's a need for some level of security.
Sure.
So I want to know if the information and communication aspects of the integrated framework involves security, or maybe it's a standalone point.
Exactly. So thank you for telling us about that part. I missed out on it. It should definitely include security matters because opportunities come with them problems. Every opportunity comes with its own problem. Automation is good. It's making us do so many things quickly, but they come with their own risks. Cyber security, internet crime, internet theft, people trying to use that same platform that helps all of us to defraud us, to cause harm, and so on and so forth. So the information and communication system or process in the organization should be embedded fully with security features. Otherwise, we are doing nothing. Otherwise, we are actually creating more danger even than solving a problem. Yeah, thank you very much. Any other question? Let's go ahead. Control activities. What COSO means by control activities, in addition to all the broader things you have spoken about, are certain specific things. These are mostly the actual policies on the ground in the organization. So things like segregation of duties, segregation of duties. What segregation of duties means is that we have to design our systems, operating systems, such that no one person begins a process, sees the process from the beginning to the end. It's like giving the whole world's power to that person. And you can understand when you have that amount of power, what you can do without you realizing what you are doing. So segregation of duties is a specific control activity which should be embedded in the control system to stop fraud and error, particularly. So for example, no one person should be made to run the whole of the, let's say, the sales processing system. The sales processing systems begin with receiving customers' orders, making their orders ready, shipping or dispatching their orders, and receiving monies. Setting up the receivable accounts, receiving monies from them, and updating the receivables account. Also updating the cash book or the bank, doing bank reconciliation, banking the money yourself. How can a system be like that? What is likely to happen when a system runs like this is that, yes, people will be taught by the system to be thieves. It could be that the people didn't intend to be thieves, but the system is actually making stealing lucrative for them, appealing to them, if the system is like that. So you break the process into some logical segments, logical parts, and then separate people handle the logical parts, so that it becomes naturally like the separate people serve as checks on each other. And that's better than not, done that way. Another specific thing that goes in under control activities could be physical, we can call physical control. Physical controls in the form of passwording, maybe all computers or all things that need to be passworded. locking all acts, places that people can go there by unauthorized means. All places that need to be locked, locking all of them with maybe highly secured security locks. These are all physical controls. Apart from physical controls, we can also have authorization. Authorization is different from segregation of duties. Authorization, and I think this then you will see it in almost every organization. You see it mostly in the form of spending that maybe the branch manager, I'm just using this as an example, is authorized to spend money within a certain bracket beyond which he needs an approval, or he doesn't even need to seek approval. He cannot do it. It has to be done by a higher officer. These are part of authorization procedures. And the objective is to prevent errors, fraud, and other issues that can cause the firm to collapse. Okay. The last component of the COSO framework is what they call monitoring. So this is the fifth component. Monitoring. Monitoring, as you know, it doesn't have any technical meaning. The whole of the system, as you have described, needs to be monitored for changes if it requires changes, for updating if it requires updating, so that the system can stand the test of time. Because everything in the world is in motion, so everything changes over time. So you cannot prepare a risk register that is deemed to be working as a magic. Once a teacher, always a teacher concept doesn't apply here. No, that's not even true. Once a teacher is not always a teacher. So the teacher needs to update himself to remain being a teacher. The teacher needs to continuously be abreast with how things are changing to remain an effective teacher. Otherwise, he will be a teacher anyway, but he may not be an effective teacher. So that monitoring aspect of the control system, very important to keep the control system being effective all the time. So that's basically the internal control system by COSO. Any questions? Okay, so let's have your course outline has a specific focus on cash. You see, the things that we need to control in the business are broader. The whole of the organization needs to be controlled. And that's why we discussed that general framework of internal control. So this is a generic framework which needs to be customized or tailored down to the specific situation of your firm. So like I advise, you can begin to read more on it and see how certain things about it can be implemented in your firm. Richmond asked me about risk register, so I think he's highly interested in that area, and I think he will read more on it and probably try to implement one if one is not already there, or update what is already there. Let's talk about cash, because your course outline highlights it. Because cash is very important. They say that cash is the lifeblood of organizations. And it's not only organizations, in fact, it's the lifeblood of everybody, especially women. They need cash. So cash is very important. So special focus on how to protect cash. This is going to be an open discussion because all of us are in some managerial roles in our job. You need not to be called a manager for you to see yourself as you control some aspect of the organization. In other words, you do some specific job which requires that you probably have to deal with some cash. So let's talk about it. Let's bring our experiences to bear and understand it more. Cash control or internal controls around cash. Around cash. The control objective, you see, the kind of objective we may want to achieve around cash may be things like one, completeness of cash, so that all cash. Okay, let's even talk about existence first. So the objective of putting up any control measure around cash may be to ensure existence, meaning recorded cash balances actually exist, and that we have not made a mistake such that what we have recorded does not represent a cash which actually exists. So existence, we might want to achieve the objective of completeness. Recorded cash balances include every cash that needs to be recorded, so that there's nothing like, oh, there is this cash, but it has not been recorded. That is different from the existence. The existence can be that, oh, we have just created some paper cash, we've just recorded, they don't actually exist. And we want to guard against that. So our internal control system should be designed in such a way that when we say cash of, let's say, 100,000, that 100,000 actually exists. Completeness is saying that 100,000 represents all cash transactions that we have done. We have not left anyone out, or we have not included other things that don't belong to the period. We also have an objective of, rights and obligation. By rights, we mean that the cash belongs to the organization, and that the organization has rights to spend the money, blah, blah, blah. If it is about liabilities, then the organization actually owes the liabilities. It's not like someone has created fictitious obligations for the organization to pay. We might also have as an objective accuracy, valuation, and allocation. Recorded cash balances are cash balances that we can actually collect. This comes in because of the issue of receivables. Because from time to time, we may have to reassess receivables. Some of our institutional receivables, institutions can buy from them, and maybe the institution is even collapsed or on the verge of collapse. We need to reassess the collectibility of such debts. And in accounting, we do a lot of things. We have write downs. We may want to write down the value because for assessment of likelihood of non-payment. So that's about accuracy of the cash value, the accuracy of the valuation. All right, so this may be the key control objectives. When we are setting up any control system around cash, this may be what we want to achieve in respect of cash. So if that's what it is, then we all can brainstorm at our personal level and say, okay, well, we can do this, which will help in ensuring this. We can do that, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. And those things becomes the control procedures, the control activities, which will help you achieve the control objectives. So that's how open it's going to be. And we don't want it to be boring, please. So you have to contribute. Don't let me do yes, 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 yes. And you are hearing me doing yes, 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 and you don't talk. So the floor is open, please. Cash controls, internal controls around cash. We don't want people to steal cash. We want all recordings about cash to be as accurate as possible in terms of existence, completeness. valuation, we want to make sure that if we say this cash, or let's say in connection with receivables, if we say this amount will be collected or be converted to cash this period, the valuation is correct, the amount is collectible, and so on and so forth. If that is what we want to do, we want to achieve, what are the specific things we can do to make sure we achieve those things? Well, that's the question.
Sir,
Yes, please. Is this Richmond?
yeah,
Yeah, Rich.
I think that there's the need for us to do some background check on employees
Good. So let me
if we
write them.
want to safeguard cash. And then another point that you mentioned earlier regarding that, which is we should also establish the segregation of duties. It should be part of the internal controls.
Okay. So with the segregation of duties, what Rich means is that one person should not collect the cash, count them, go and bank them, and prepare his own bank reconciliation. He will steal the money and make things balance automatically.
Yeah.
But if you have segregated, let's say, that whole process into someone collecting the cash, someone in charge about the recordings, someone in charge of the banking, and someone doing the reconciliation, that will be fine. So in this particular design, the latter design, it will require that both of them are able to agree to be thieves at the same time for there to be theft. And that's in most cases very difficult to achieve. Very difficult that you get a whole lot of people agreeing to steal from the organization. It can be difficult to achieve that. But it can be very easy if one person does all of those things. He can easily steal it and always cover it up. So, Rich, thank you very much. We have these two control activities. What can you also say?
Hello.
Okay, let me get to the class and see. Please, if you want to talk, you can just
Hello.
mention
Yes,
your
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, please, the name.
This Richard.
Yeah, Richard.
I'll also talk about supervision.
What, please? Please come again.
I said supervision.
Supervision, good. Very good, supervision. Supervision such that employees are supervised. I mean, it's self-explanatory. The supervision may take the form of we implementing something like CCTV cameras and the likes. Yes, they are part of the supervision controls. Thank you very much. What again?
Hello.
Yes, madam.
I think we can also make the system digital so that
Okay.
we cannot be holding cash.
Good. Good. Okay. So that's very great. So I want to add something small to what he said. In fact, the digitization she said actually means that we should try and make the system as much as possible cashless. Where about me at 10? Cashless. It is the cash that your eye will see and make you feel like, Master, I should take it. But if you don't see cash, then maybe your mind will not worry you that much. Because you cannot take the papers and go and spend. The papers are not promissory notes. So if you make things cashless, so instead of probably people paying in physical cash and someone taking them and holding custody of them in the business. We can, if it is possible, and if that is going to, it depends on the kind of customers the people we deal with. If that is possible, we may decide not to make people do cash payments. They do electronic payments, so they pay probably straight to bank. It will be difficult for people to steal if people pay straight to the bank than if the cash is collected by someone and it is in the business. It's in a drawer or it's in some safe. Yeah, so we can make our system as cashless as possible. Thank you very much. Any more to add? Okay, that's good. And
I
as
think
part
that
of, okay, Richmond.
I think that we also have to set timelines for activities.
Okay,
For
timelines.
instance,
I'm going to write it. Timelines. Timelines for activities. Rich, please explain to us how this will help us prevent wrong things happening to cash.
See, all monies collected. Let's say we are selling rice, okay, bags of rice. All right.
Yeah.
Now, all monies collected must be banked.
Yeah.
All right. Good. And there has to be timelines to it. For instance, in some institutions, what they do is that all cash collected must be banked intact within 24 hours.
Sure.
Now, if you don't do that, there's a punitive measure. And then when cash is banked, all other transactions involving money should go through the bank, so that at the end of the month, we both our bank statement. In preparing the bank reconciliation statement, we will not have issues, so that these things will hasten or facilitate the preparation of these reports. When these things are done within time frames, we cut down on fraud, because there are always checks and balances in place whereby people kind of get scared of the system because they know that, Charlie, next week, we have to prepare this document. We have to take this money to the bank, and if you don't do that within a short time, something can happen. So even if you want to do something with the money, you are scared because you have to bank the money intact within 24 hours. I don't know if
Sure.
explanation.
I think I like it's like a lecture. I like the lecture you have given. Very comprehensive. So what Rich means by timelines for activity is actually not activity in space. It's this specific activity of cash. So timeline should be set for banking cash, so that you cannot take advantage of the cash in your custody. If people can bank the cash anytime they want, then they can use it to trade. And that can be risky for the organization. So a policy, strict policy. All monies should be banked the same day of collection. That's what he means by within 24 hours. It can be even as straightforward as money should be banked before close of business, not 24 hours. Yes. So if you're going to close 5, money should be banked before 5. If you say within 24 hours, it means that the money can be taken to bank after you close at 5. Money should be banked before business close for the day. And when those stretch timelines are set, they are control measures. It means that we restrict the likelihood that people can keep the money for their advantage and try to do swapping and so on and so forth. There are a lot of cash stealing schemes. You have to read about them. That's a reading assignment. So you can put it somewhere, cash stealing or cash theft schemes. schemes that people can design to kind of steal cash from the organization is in a smarter way, such that if the organization doesn't take it, it might not even see it. By the time it sees it, great harm has been done. We need to read about such schemes. It is reading for you to go and do. You can just do the reading right in your palm. On your phone, just go and read. Okay, so basically this is the
I think that's the last point that I want to talk about.
Okay, last point, Rich.
Yeah, I think the auditing should be regular, very frequent.
Auditing of cash.
Yeah.
Regular auditing of cash. Good, very good. Very, very good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Is Richmond talking about internal auditing or external auditing? Because for external auditors, they have their timelines, but internal auditors, they are part of the organization. So assuming that the person wants to go and bank in, he can submit his details to the internal auditor to vet, to make sure that the receipt that he has issued at the end of the day correspond with the total cash he has collected before he goes in a bank. Either than that, the person might bank less than what he has collected. So maybe we need to look at the kind of auditors that he's talking about. Is it external auditors or internal auditors?
Okay, thank you very much. I think he's speaking more about internal auditors than external auditors. And let me even use the opportunity to clarify something in terms of what external auditors are by law to do and what internal auditors do. We are speaking about the internal control system of the firm, which is intended to manage the risks that the firm faces, both downside risks and upside risks. That is the core mandate of those charged with governing the firm. The board of directors, if one exists, and its management. It is never the primary responsibility of the external auditors. So it's your job. It's just like driving and securities around driving. When you are in your car, it is your own life which is at stake. It is not a policeman's life which is at stake. So putting on your seatbelt, having all safety things intact, is not to any advantage of the security officer. It's your primary responsibility. In fact, police people they don't need to stop us on the road and ask us for fire extinguisher and those things. It's because they themselves want to kind of profit unduly from it. Otherwise, it's not their primary responsibility. It is your primary responsibility because it's your life. So that's how it works out when it comes to internal audit, external audit. External auditors don't have that primary responsibility of making sure the firm runs well and survives and is profitable. They don't have that responsibility. Their responsibility solely is that those who are charged with the responsibility of making sure the business runs well will do reporting to people who need to be reported to. And they can misrun the business and misreport. So the auditor says as a referee, hey, no, do report as you did. If you do it that way, I am fine with you. Then you sort your problem with your boss. So that's the key job of the external auditor. So the responsibility of running the business correctly, making the business profitable, making the business survive is the key responsibility of management. Management may have to do a number of things to make sure they achieve that mandate, including setting up a function within the firm that tries to monitor risks and give them feedback. That's the internal auditing function. So what Rich said is actually the job of the internal auditing function. They have to be doing the regular auditing of cash and all highly risked areas of the firm and giving feedback to management for quicker response. Quicker response to dealing with the problem. Yeah, I think at least it partly answers your question.
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is basically on the internal control. I mean, the general framework. We use the COSO framework. And these are some cash control specific to cash. Internal control specific to cash. There are other parts of the course outline we need to do. Bank reconciliation. Statements. Actually, bank reconciliation, the whole of the process, not just statements. The process of doing bank reconciliation. The course outline that is giving you requires you to know this thing. So we're supposed to be able to prepare bank reconciliations. And we're supposed to be able to spot discrepancies between a bank balance and the bank records from our bankers and our own records. We should be able to spot discrepancies, and then we should be able to reconcile them through the framework of bank reconciliation. Basically, that's what it is. And this is an exercise that, like I told you before, it's actually not, the calculations involved are not managerial level things. They are basic calculations. We actually treat these things at SHS level. So we'll do them. It's not going to be difficult. Just that we will not, I don't want to add it to today's lecture to make it so lengthy. Right. So I will send you some materials ahead of time on bank reconciliation. And then we will meet some other time within the week before we meet on the weekend. So it can be tomorrow. Okay, so I'll take feedback from Rich about when exactly we should meet tomorrow and what time to deal with bank reconciliation. And there's also another one they call petty cash. I don't normally see them to be necessary at your level. But because it's on your course outline, we need to actually do them for exam purposes. So do bank reconciliation and petty cash stuff tomorrow, if the time is good for us. Any comments? I can hear some mic open. Any comments? Okay, so if it is good for us, then we will want to cut the lecture here so that the lecture doesn't get too lengthy. And then we do the bank reconciliation and the petty cash thing tomorrow, if that is agreed.
Yes, sir. I think we are. For me, I'm okay with that. But the time, today some of my colleagues were still at the office, and they closed around 7. So if we can move the time to 7 p.m. so that by then they might be in the house so that they can
will be fully ready. Okay.
Yes,
Before the lecture, I was thinking of 7, but because we had missed on some earlier lecture, it was kind of pushing some pressure on me. The 7 I think is cool because especially the women among us, when they close from work, they have another whole work of home stuff and other things, which are very, very, very tiring. So I'm cool with the 7. In fact, I support the 7. If all of you also agree to that, then we can start it from 7.
We are almost used to the 7.
Our ladies, are you okay with the 7?
Yes, please.
But is it by design naturally that women don't want to talk in class? Only few women do talk in class. because I get that big experience from undergraduate teaching. Everywhere, in fact. The ladies are mostly quiet. Only one or two will be talkative. The guys will be doing the talking. But
So most of the ladies are Sabrine, and for Sabrine people, they talk less. Everything is in there. So
Hey, Richard.
okay, I get it. That's good. Okay, so is everybody there? I think still some people couldn't join in. Some
Yes,
people
please.
couldn't join.
So I think it's because of the channel we use today.
The channel.
Yes. The
Oh,
Google
really?
Class.
So some
Yes.
people are not on it.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. But I think Richie resent the links to the platforms that will be convenient for them.
not. So
I
today
asked, I asked Richie
I
to
didn't
do
do.
that.
No, I sent a notification on the platform that the link has been posted on the Google Classroom, because the last time I gave an indication that from henceforth everything will be on the Google Classroom, so we should all try and hook up onto the Google Classroom. So
Hey, Richie,
I
this
don't
is
know what
very
happened.
strict interpretation of what I said. Very strict interpretation of what I said. Or if you could copy, because you're on the platform, so you could just right click on the link and copy the link and paste it in your probably WhatsApp group. That's okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Tomorrow we'll do that for them.
Yes, and they are not totally at loss. By tomorrow I'll try to get the recording uploaded, and that's why Mary's feedback is very important for me. But sometimes the reason why you will have to probably struggle with the boring parts of the lecture is because of this. Because once we are finished like this, I need to get it there by tomorrow. If you want to do video editing, it can take you a lot of time. By which time the information you put there is not relevant for the key people who needed it at the time. I'm doing the lecture with you, and it's for your exam. As for general audience, the whole world is an audience to the video. As for the general audience, I cannot sacrifice the students who need this lecture for their exam for the general audience. So for the time being, maybe anybody who want to watch it should kind of struggle with the boring part of the lecture. It's okay. Let's focus on the non-boring parts. We can just, move forward and take ourselves from the boring part, and that's okay. Okay. So we are done for the lecture. Yeah, we are done for the lecture. But we have some few things to discuss.